intra-African trade and the level at which it is, or it was, when the bank was conceived, orchestrated the very reason why the African Export-Import Bank was set up. So this question is very dear to my heart. It's very dear to the DNA of Afreximbank. You can't justify and explain exhaustively why Africa is the richest continent in terms of natural resources, yet we're split into several atomic countries, stopped from trading among ourselves, stopped from growing industrialization and so on. And that is why that low level of intra-African trade, which according to the AFCFTA Secretariat, today stands around 18%, orchestrated the current strategic plan of Afreximbank, which is making intra-African trade and implementation of the AFCFTA the arrowhead of our strategy. Okay? Why is that so? When you look at the rate, in Europe it's about 60%, in Asia, intra-Asian trade is about 70%. We have the natural resources that actually make up the trade in these countries, yet we have 18%. That's why for us, it's the reason why we stay up late in the night to ensure these efforts move the needle a little bit along the positive x-axis. When I joined the bank some, say, 10 years ago, we were around 13, 14%. We listened to EVP Kanayo, who spoke about what the bank has been doing by way of financing, pumping in about 20 billion during our last strategic plan from 2017 to 2021. And we want to double it between now and 2026, which is the end of the current strategic plan.
One of the key challenges that is very clear is that the economy of the country has not been diversified enough. If you look at the breakdown of the GDP and contribution, etc., looks diversified, but there's no depth to it. Revenue is 100%, almost 90% dependent on oil. And even in that oil contribution, there's a lot that has been left untapped, because what we're doing is we're exporting crude oil. Now, everybody knows that crude oil, there are so many derivatives in the entire value chain. You know, that's one area. There's even also the other aspect of it is the various infrastructure that is required in order to produce. We have the DG of the man here. He will happily tell you what challenges customers face and all of that. Now, when you have a country that is dependent on extractive, just raw materials and ship it out, what happens is that your country is now vulnerable to the volatility that goes on in the international market. Oil price drops today, revenue goes down, etc., and all of that. You ship the raw materials out. Now, when you do that, what you're doing is that you are exporting jobs and importing poverty. How is that? Because what you're doing is you ship the raw material out, the countries that are importing take that raw material. Let's use oil, for example, because that's our biggest export. Take that oil, they process it into petroleum products, etc., and the entire value chain. They bring it back and sell it to you at multiples of what they paid you when they were taking the crude oil. So what does that do to your revenue, budgets, etc., is that, first of all, you have to borrow money in order to pay, because you're not earning enough in order to meet your requirements. So there's that volatility and that challenge. So any little blip, you are in trouble.
Africa as a region contributes just about 3%, to global trade. And the reason for this is that we trade more in primary commodities. I mean, oil, solid minerals, and even our agricultural environments, we export raw with very little value addition. Whereas, if you check the composition of trade globally, you discover that manufactured product, contributes well over 60%. So I believe the starting point, for us to grow our trade is to begin to add value, to our products. Now, at the level of technology and infrastructure we probably will not be able to compete with other regions of the world, Europe, Asia, in the export of manufactured products. Nigeria, for example, our total export of manufactured products is just about 12% of our total exports. But within the regional markets, we can compete, amongst ourselves. I mean, manufacturing component of Nigerian export in the region, for example, is about 90%. So I believe we can, start with that, use that to go through the learning curve, while we develop the infrastructure and technology to be able to compete, even globally.
There are quite a number of solutions to lack of finance. And in this part of the world, where startups, for instance, have the challenge of any banking institution believing in them, you see that the problem becomes compounded. This is not also to take away the fact that even when they do have access to these funds, it comes at rates that are quite high. To the average manufacturer, for instance, the average lending rate is about 26%. And we have said that if you give a manufacturer anything more than 5%, you are not encouraging him to make any profit whatsoever. I mean, this is because he competes even in his own market with foreign goods that come from very low-cost environments. And this automatically puts the manufacturer, not to even talk of small-scale industries, in jeopardy. I believe that institutions like Afreximbank and special purpose vehicles in Nigeria like BOI come to the rescue in this regard. But then you question the level of capitalization of the BOI. There's quite a lot. In Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, for instance, we have 2,500 members, and more than 70% are actually in the small and medium scale landscape. So the challenge of are not being competitive, the challenge of not being able to produce to scale, the challenge of not being able to provide power for yourself because public supply is never there, the challenge of not being able to move your products becomes compounded because each time that you lose market because of all these factors, you are actually owing the banks more, you are actually at the mercy of being received, and then you lose market edge and you fall into what we call being moribund.